Tyler Joos CJF from Wyoming, Illinois.
You know, the very essence of the mental game is this. The only reason an event matters is because we make it matter.
Welcome to the Mullins Farrier Podcast.
Every horse, whatever it was doing, had a season. Once their competition season finished, they took the shoes off, they chucked it out in the field with some other horses, and it had a 2, maybe 3 months period where it went and remembered what being a horse was all about.
Even in a cheaper area, your prices should be set by your skill level, by your experience. And some people might not feel that they're worth, as much as others. But if you're only charging $160 to shoe a horse, then the only way you're making money is on your trims.
The WCB was a way to make sure that you kept the trade alive. I think I'm a custodian of the trade, so it's like we have to keep it going.
It was hard, but you adapt and overcome, and that probably gets to me where I am now. It's problem solving, horseshoeing's problem solving, and back in the day it was problem solving how to be as strong as the older apprentices. So it's all about adapting and overcoming, which was good.
I know we learn every day, but you do have to put yourself outside the box and just continue to learn, which is why I was just trying to do my fellowship, because I still have apprentices, and if I stay at my AW, I'm stagnant.
Welcome, everyone. I've got a few items in the shopkeeping portion for you here. First of all, the BFBA Focus 2023 tickets are now available for sale. They have quite the list of lecturers this year covering a wide range of topics, including Jay and Sol Tovey, Chris Gregory, Dr. Simon Curtis, Axel Vibe, and Mark Trussler. There are live demonstrations as well as a very large trade show. Go to forgeandfarrier.co.uk for more details. Just click on the BFBA Focus 2023 link. I hope to see you there. The folks at the Canadian Equine Hoof Care Association wanted me to let you know that they have an event going on September 30th to October 2nd called the Evolution in Whole Horse Soundness. This is a conference for all hoof care professionals, equine industry professionals, students, and owners. They have many lecturers, including Karen Dougal, I apologize if I pronounce any of these wrong, Julianne Lee, Paige M. Poss, Yogi Sharp, Dr. Thomas Teskey, and Dr. Elizabeth Ewell. On October 2nd, there's a bonus wet lab for members only. For more information, go to CanadianEquineHoofCare.com/conference. The end of September is a busy time. There is also the Ontario Farriers Association's convention, September 28th to the 30th at Lumberty Fairgrounds in Lumberty, Ontario. Riley Kirkpatrick is the keynote speaker and the judge for the contest. As I'm sure you saw on our social media feeds, we had an auction last week. Today's guest, farrier and toolmaker extraordinaire Tyler Joos, donated one of his handmade hammers for us to raise money for the podcast. Thank you to everybody who bid on the hammer, and a special thank you goes out to Payden Underwood, who had the highest bid. And I have to say, if my clients paid me as fast as Payden did, I'd be in pretty good shape. A while back, my good friend Andrew DeVisser, who you know from several episodes on this podcast, gave me a call and he said, "You need to talk to Tyler Joos." As you'll hear in the interview, Tyler reached out to Andrew for some business advice, and they have corresponded many times since. And Andrew hasn't led me astray yet, so I put Tyler on the hit list. And lo and behold, Tyler reached out to me. I wasn't aware, but he's an avid listener of the podcast, and he wanted to support the podcast in his own unique way. Hence the auction for the hammer. Now, Tyler is one of those people where anytime his name comes up, everyone has nothing but nice things to say about him. Salt of the earth is actually a term I've heard used to describe him several times. At one point in the interview, you're going to hear Tyler talk about a time where a customer wasn't happy with one of his hammers. So Tyler made a new one and sent it off to him. And he mentioned that gentleman by name, Connor Sloman. At the end of the interview, he was actually concerned that Connor might not want that story told. But I reached out to Connor and asked him if he would be okay with it. And as I already suspected, he was. His response was, "I think that's a great story. It shows his commitment to his work and customer satisfaction." He said it's one of his favorite hammers, and he uses it every day. Both of them, actually. Tyler and I had a great, candid chat, and I think there are a lot of great takeaways from it. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. So I learned of you. I'm sure our paths have crossed a few times at different trade shows and that, but I really learned of you from Andrew DeVisser. Sort of as a lead up to that particular story, maybe we should talk about the area that you're shoeing in and what that environment is like.
I live in central Illinois. It's very rural where I live. I don't shoe probably 10 horses within a half hour of my house. So everything else is further out than that. It's very mixed. There's no one discipline of anything. And a lot of trail horses, there's just a lot of everything. It was an area that it's where I grew up. I grew up 4 miles from where I live now.
Oh, okay.
And that's just where just established my business.
Right. So I guess in reaching out to Andrew, how did you hear of Andrew in the first place?
I heard of Andrew originally when he did a podcast on the Butler podcast. I don't remember him talking much about his business background, but then I learned of him when I heard him on your podcast. I'm the type of person that if I hear something or I want to know something more, I'll just send somebody a message and they can choose whether or not they want to respond. And Andrew decided that he was willing to help me out. So that's kind of where it started with Andrew. I just sent him a message and then we had a phone conversation and it went from there.
Okay. And if you don't mind me asking, what was the gist of that message you sent him?
Some of it, a little bit, was kind of how, his vehicle that he's driving. Some of it was to do with pricing. I knew he was big into the pricing end of things. And also just figuring out what it actually costs to shoe a horse. That was probably the biggest light bulb moment for me.
Right.
After hearing Andrew. And I started on the journey probably at least a year before I actually reached out to Andrew to start to talk to him. But he inspired me to start on that path.
Right. So for your particular area, if you don't mind me asking, what would be the cost of shoeing one horse all around?
So 5 years ago, I started on this journey at that time, I figured it cost me $117 to shoe a horse all the way around. And at that point, I was charging $110 to shoe a horse all the way around. I remember having the conversation with my wife that, she's like, "I don't really think you need to raise your prices. We're doing okay." And then I told her, "Look, it's costing me this much money to shoe a horse," that she's like, "You need to raise your prices." Like Andrew says, I was subsidizing my shoeing with my trims. I thought I was making money. I was not. And I was basically gauging my prices off of what other farriers in the area were charging. And I just kind of decided that wasn't going to work anymore.
Right. So then in your conversation with Andrew, what were some key takeaways that you ended up working on as soon as you finished talking to him?
I raised my prices twice already by the time I started talking to Andrew, and I was thinking I needed to raise my prices again. And I was kind of at that point where I was charging was more than what I thought I would charge in a long time. And I was wanting to go up again and just wondering what I needed to do. And basically the takeaway from Andrew, he said, "You got to raise your price. You got to go up again."
It helps to hear somebody else say it.
It was huge for him to walk me through that because I was pretty nervous. Up until that point, I'd raised twice. I hadn't lost any customers yet, per se, maybe just a few horses. But the next jump I did after talking to Andrew, that is when I started losing horses. And that was really hard for me.
A little scary, isn't it?
For my book, I lost a significant amount of horses. It wasn't a boatload in the grand scheme of things, but it was pretty scary. It was during wintertime when I started losing them. looking back on it, Andrew's like, it'll be all right. It'll be fine. It was about 6 months until stuff started picking up. And then I ended up picked up like 3 or 4 times the amount of horses I lost. And like he says, coming in at the higher prices, and those clients never even knew I charged less. So, and the new ones didn't balk at the prices.
One of the things that I have found is once you become that person who's charging what you should be charging and closer to the top end of whatever anybody else in your particular area is charging, all of a sudden it also gets you more clout with the clientele. Like there's a certain perception that you must know what you're doing if you're confident enough to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I've noticed that a lot with my customers, but I don't even know if my customers even really know what other people are even charging anymore.
Okay.
And now the last time I just raised the first of the year again this year. And that particular time, I lost a bunch a year before. This time I lost 1 horse. Andrew had told me that you go from being known as the most expensive farrier, but then you progress to being known as the expensive farrier that does good work.
Right.
And then the price does not affect that.
Yep.
I don't know where the top end's at in my area. I thought I hit it when I lost all those horses a couple years ago, but I realized that I haven't hit that top yet.
Right. Yeah. I think one of the other things that, like when you say that you had that kind of scary time when you started to lose clients, sometimes you'll hear clinicians that will say, yeah, raise your prices. And they're often coming from an area that already has a lot of wealth in it. And for a person in an area like yours, it's almost, you think, well, you don't know my situation. You don't know my area.
Yeah. And I was that guy. I heard guys talking about that. And I'm like, basically, you don't get it. There's no way you can charge that kind of money. And I'm not getting what other parts of the country, but I mean, I remember where I'm charging now, I remember thinking, man, if I could ever hit that threshold in my business, I didn't figure it would ever be this early and this soon in my career.
Right. And how far into your career are you?
Yeah, so I say that, but I'm actually just this week, would have been 21 years ago, I graduated from horseshoeing school.
Oh, wow.
Right around the 4th of July. So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I started young. I was 19 when I went to shoeing school.
This is a good segue into that. How did you get your start? Where did you go to school and what inspired you to go there?
I went to Heartland in 2002. I didn't know what I wanted to do for a living, but I wanted to make my living with horses. And we had a horse. Actually went to a vet clinic to have a farrier work on it. And my dad just talked to the farrier there. And he said, if you want to make money in horses, he said, you either got to shoe them or you got to be a vet. He said, those are the only 2 ways you're going to make money in horses. I didn't want to go to college.
No. Yeah.
Especially for that long. And come to find out, I don't like blood either. So
okay.
I was one of those clients that we don't really want. I was the 3 or 4 time a year, call them at the last minute to come trim my horses.
Right.
That was who I was. So I didn't even realize that you can even make a decent living shoeing horses. So I just thought shoeing horses sounded like a good plan if I wanted to make my living with them. And then I was planning to go to a local school, which is no longer, but my mom and dad happened to see an article in the Farm and Ranch magazine about Chris and Kelly.
No way.
Yeah. It was just this little half-page article about this Heartland horseshoeing school. We have one of our church congregations down there. So I ended up living with a couple from our church down there. My mom and dad were pretty nervous. I was the oldest going away from home for the first time. So I actually lived 6 miles from school. I didn't live in the bunkhouse. I drove back and forth every day. And
okay.
I went down there for 4 months and started March of 2002.
Okay.
I'm so fortunate that I ended up there.
No kidding.
It really changed my how I shoe horses. It was never a question. The forge work, all that kind of stuff just got me off to a great start.
No kidding. Now, I know the school has gone through a lot of iterations. I don't know if you've seen the new bunkhouse.
I have not seen it.
Oh,
I've heard about it.
Yeah.
And it was pretty primitive when I was there.
That's what I was going to ask. So the shop was built by that point, was it?
The shop was in there. It was just the part out towards the road was concrete, but where all the forges were, the block forges weren't there yet. It wasn't concrete.
Oh, really? Okay.
Part of the time I worked in just an open coke forge that had no chimney out the ceiling.
Right.
Or anything. So yeah, it was definitely different what it is now.
Right. Yeah. I wondered what it would have been like in 2002. Which course did you take?
I took I think they call it the Journeyman, the 16-week course.
Okay, yeah. So you were there for a while. And then did you hit the ground running when you went back home, or did you apprentice?
Yeah, so I pretty much went right to going on my own when I got out. I drove his truck. I hauled grain. That's what I did from when I graduated high school in May of 2001 till March of 02 to try to save some money to go to shoeing school. And then I drove truck part-time for about another almost a year.
Okay.
In the meantime, that fall I got married. So then I had a wife to support as well. And about a year later, I did an apprenticeship. I quit my trucking job and went to work for a guy that was about 2.5 hours from me. That was the closest journeyman horseshoer I could find.
Okay.
He was 2 hours from me, and I worked with him about a year, just a couple days a week.
Okay.
At one time, he did a fair amount of Arabs, so I did learn a little bit about not doing a lot of weights, but pads and just in general, working on some of the Arabs. He was really good for me, taught me a lot. I owe him a lot.
And what was that gentleman's name?
So his name was Rick Burton. He served time on the board for the AFA. He's one of those guys that, people like, they like. If they don't, they don't. He was kind of a controversial. When I worked for him for 3 months, he told me I was the longest lasting guy that had ever worked for him. So,
Yep.
but we had a good time. We still talk to each other at the clinics. He's retired now, but
Okay.
which is a little ironic because Rick, he did a lot of natural balance. So coming from Heartland, going to more of that, that was a huge swing.
No kidding.
I kind of did that for a little bit, but that's not where I'm at now.
Right. Out of curiosity, what caused you to move away from that?
It's probably more just the guys I hung around with, and coming from Heartland, just the traditional, more traditional, and that sort of thing.
Right.
I mean, I didn't do it on every horse by any stretch. I'd put them on a few horses, but then one of my good buddies, probably another one of my, still to this day, he's a very traditional farrier, and he's had a lot of effect on me too, as far as how I shoe horses.
Who's that?
So that's Steve Summersheim.
Okay.
He's about 2.5 hours from me. We met each other when we were working on our certifications. He shoes some up in my area, so I'll go hang out. We've just become friends.
Okay. And how far into your career were you before you started your certification journey?
I started my CF probably about 2 years after I was in. The first time I went was a disaster. I failed all 3 portions. Wasn't prepped. I ended up passing it all 3 the next year when I came back. I didn't travel a lot. Like I would just wait for the local certification to come up.
Right.
And then I would just go. And so I got my CF that way. I did my CJF, the written and the horse. And then my horse was about ready to run out. So I ended up going to Heartland to take my bar shoe. And I actually had to take my written test too, but I ended up passing at that point.
Okay.
That'd probably been about 08 or so.
Gotcha. And what made you decide to pursue that, like the certification route?
I mean, really, that was just kind of part of the mentality.
Coming from Heartland?
Coming from Heartland, that was just, it really wasn't too much of a question of whether I was going to do it or not, which was kind of cool. Cody had come to Illinois when he was working on his, I don't remember if it was his CF or his CJF when I was testing as well. He was really young.
Right.
He was probably, I don't remember how old he was, but he couldn't drive yet, I don't think.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So it was pretty cool. Actually, I think Chris or Kelly was there when I passed my horse that year. And
oh, cool. Your story about what happened your first time attempting the CF, I hear that version a lot. I think a lot of people don't realize what it is until they get there. And then it's a bit of a surprise.
And I went thinking I was prepped. The guy I was working with, he was a tester. I thought I was prepped. I thought I was going to be fine. And written stuff, testing has always been really easy for me through school.
Okay.
And I even failed that. So that was a pretty disappointing weekend for me.
Bit of a kick in the pants for sure.
Yeah, it was, I think I left early and, I ended up leaving and heading home. I was pretty bummed out, but I did learn, and it was a good journey.
Yeah, because I push certification so much on here, and a lot of people reach out to me and kind of tell me how they made out in in their exams. And sometimes it doesn't go well. And I hear about that. Sometimes 3-hour drive home, and it's probably the longest drive you'll have, right?
I'm glad I didn't have to drive home from Lamar and have failed that go. That would have been a really long. But the cool thing about that was, so I always failed my bar shoe and I never came to size. And I hadn't practiced that much. So I made a boatload of bar shoes then. And I knew that I was going to come to size. I think the first heat out of the fire, taking that test, my forge handle fell off. It burned up and fell off. And, so I was opening it with a pair of tongs and stuff. But thankfully I was able to, it went okay.
Yep.
Dusty Franklin was one of my testers for that. And then another guy, I can't remember his name, but yeah, I'm thankful and glad I passed.
No kidding. Yeah, I've heard a few nightmare stories, bar shoes burning up or the bar breaking. And one gentleman, when I was in the Heartland for my run, his son was watching and his back caught fire. Mark Thorkelson jumped in.
Oh, you know what? I think I remember
hearing
about that on one of your other podcasts.
Yeah, Mark was such a hero. There was no hesitation, just barehanded, put the kid's back out. He did all the components of stop, drop, and roll except for the roll part.
Wow.
Mark finished the rest. They paused it, and the gentleman, thank goodness his son was okay. They got him a new Heartland shirt, and he finished his run and passed. So, yeah.
Wow.
Talk about
that's cool.
Under pressure.
Absolutely.
Another thing that people listening will probably know you for is your tool making. And how did you get into that?
Yep.
It's a whole other realm, isn't it?
So this area of the world where I shoe in, it gets cold. And shoeing really it's not as much anymore, but it still does. Shoeing slows down. The trail horses, we pull shoes. We're stretching the horses out. So my business was always slower. For a while, I made furniture. My brother works for a rustic furniture factory. So I made drawer pulls and stuff for them. They just knew I did blacksmithing. So they reached out to me.
Oh.
And I did that for several years. That became more like glorified factory work.
Right.
We did a lot of those. And then they decided to go with a shop that was more cost effective, that could, machinery, they could produce them cheaper. That was pretty hard for me to take, but actually it worked out all right. Cause then a few years later, I just thought a buddy of mine told me about Lyle Wynn, which he worked with Brian Brazil, did this tools to make tools class. And I thought, well, that would be cool. I could make some hammers in the winter when shoeing was slower. So that was kind of my thought was, it might be a way to make some extra income during the winter.
Right.
So I think it was in 2018 or 19, we had Lyle Wynn to my shop for 4 days and we did the tools to make tools. That's when that started.
Cool.
It's been fun. I've got to meet a lot of cool people and seen stuff go all over the place. And it's been a lot of fun.
Now, that initial course, what would have been the list of tools that you'd make in that tools to make tools course?
So basically we started out, we made all the tools that we needed to make a hammer. So we make our punches, our drifts, our fullers, top and bottom fullers, the hammer eye tongs, a cupping tool. And then on the last day, I think it was the last day, then we actually we made a hammer.
Oh, cool.
So that was, like I said, that was probably February of 2018 was when we had that.
And something about tool making that's always intrigued me, and then I imagine can be so frustrating from a toolmaker standpoint, is figuring out how hard to make it or how soft, like that process.
Yeah.
And everybody seems to have a slightly different one.
Everybody wants a little something different. Honestly, that's a lot of where my tools are, is I just kind of make what I want.
Right.
And then that's what I sell.
Okay.
The handles that I put on them are a handle that I came up with that I'm having produced. So that it fits me. It might not fit everybody, but it's just what I like.
Right.
And that's just kind of what I go for. Like you said, everybody has a little different preference on what they're looking for, even as in hardness and all that. Obviously, there's different kinds of steel as well, and what I can get with the steel I'm making mine out of.
Okay. Is the steel, especially the tool steel, is it fairly consistent? Like, do you find that as long as you follow the recipe, you're going to have the same result every time?
Yeah. I've had some that haven't turned out. I actually sold one at Summit to Connor Sloman, and he had one that was a little soft, and he was really good about it, messaged me. I made him a new one, sent it to him, and he was happy. Thankfully, things are pretty good. It's worked out all right. But since that happened, I've started to run them even just to whack on something a little bit, just to make sure I don't send something out too soft.
Right. In talking to David Chowan, I remember him saying that sometimes, because he was doing more of a mass producing thing, the foundries didn't always send back a consistent product. And that was something that he always ran into.
Yeah. That was a really helpful episode, by the way, from Dave. I really enjoyed that one. Actually, he was one of the guys I reached out to. I sent him a message and said, hey, he gave me his phone number. I called him and we had a good phone conversation. And
yeah, he's so giving with his knowledge.
We don't make out of the same steel, but yeah, he was just super helpful. And I was really glad for that.
Yeah, he gave up a lot of trade secrets in that episode. I was quite amazed and impressed.
Yeah, I've taken some of his stuff and I use it. So
yeah. So for yourself, do you take orders or do you just build what you want and then kind of sell it as you build it?
So then I started taking custom orders, and it got to be where became too much like a job.
Right.
I still may do some later. I don't have a hard and fast rule, but it got to be where it was consuming me. Like I was always in the shop. My family was noticing it. I scaled it back some to where about this spring when shoeing started picking up again, I was just kind of like, I just can't take custom orders right now. That's pretty much where I'm at now. I'm just making some stuff. Sometimes people will message me and I'll have them laying in the shop and I'll be able to sell them and I never even have to post them. I have a love-hate relationship with Facebook.
As we all do.
I mean, honestly, I went through my certification and then I just disappeared into my own little world and never saw what other people were doing. And then when I got on Facebook to start selling hammers, I started seeing some of the stuff. And I'm embarrassed to admit that, I had just been kind of going along and thinking I was doing okay. And I was really humbled by what the work I was seeing on there. And that is really, it's kind of rejuve my shoeing career. I mean, I just really feel it's really helped that a bunch. So I have a love-hate relationship. It's really helped get my stuff out there, but I really have to be careful. I really try to make an effort on keeping it from consuming me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have found, you're right, it can be quite the educational tool, and you do see a lot of good work that you can aspire to, but man, is it a place for trolls.
Yeah. So it's so hard. It's not like it's bad or it's good. Like I said, I met people from all over the place and got to be in communication. And then there's other stuff that just,
you could do without.
I don't like it at all,
Yeah.
So
Yep, no kidding. Now, how do you balance the shoeing with your shop time and your family? Is there a routine that you follow, or is it kind of spits and spurts?
I don't follow a routine, and sometimes it's not very well, although I would say I'm doing better. I am a full-time farrier. I mean, that is what I make my living doing. I guess probably my wife and kids would be a better one to ask, but I mean, I do work in the shop some during this time of year, but mostly I just shoe horses this time of year. It's really hard because I love shoeing horses. I'm a little bit obsessive. So when I get something in my head, I feel like I have to go to the shop and I got to figure something out. And when I can't figure it out, it drives me crazy. So I've struggled with that some.
Now, could you give me an example of that?
Probably when I was trying to figure out how to make driving hammers, it would drive me crazy shoeing horses during the day. And I'd have this idea and I felt like I had to go out to the shop to do it. I'd drop everything. So I'd go out to the shop and then, late at night so I could try something. And it might just be building shoes too. Maybe I really botched up a pair of shoes. I got to do another run at it and just different stuff like that. That has definitely, honestly, at times caused some conflict. My wife, it's not that she doesn't like it. She is fine with it. She loves it. I love what I do for a living. But I just got to be cognizant of it, that there is other things in life.
Yeah, sometimes it gets a little all-encompassing.
Yep, it does. When your hobby is also something that you can do as part of your job, then that can make it more difficult, I guess. I don't know. My hobby has always kind of been part of my job.
Right.
I used to ride horses, but I don't ride horses anymore. So
That was something that had to slide in the minimal number of hours you have in a day.
Yeah, that's right. It just kind of phased out of my life. Now, when I have free time, I normally like to spend it in the shop. So,
And you said you have a family, you have young kids?
yeah, so I got 6 kids.
Oh, okay.
My oldest just graduated high school and my youngest is going to start kindergarten. So,
Wow.
we got a pretty busy life.
No kidding.
It's great,
Have any of them shown interest in your job?
Not really. I mean, somewhat. My oldest son, he's the second child. He's 17. He actually was just with me today. He didn't want to get up. He thought he had the day off his normal job because it's, the day his boss wasn't working. But this business of having somebody come, and I'm a lone ranger, so pulling and clinching and helping me, man, it just really made the day seem go a lot quicker. We got done a lot earlier, and
Right.
I could get used to it.
Yeah.
But I don't know that he's going to shoe horses necessarily.
So you don't usually have help yourself then?
I don't. I've really never had a helper. I mean, I had a kid that rode with me a little bit. He would help me some, but really I've never had a helper. Not really sure how that would fit in. I think I would like to, but it's just hard for me to know how to hire somebody when my shoeing slows down significantly in the winter and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I struggle to know how to. I have a very manageable horse load for one person, but to try to go and grow it to where for 2 of us, that would be hard for me.
Yeah, it is difficult. And sometimes you'll get a lot of false starts with help. And then as you've built a book up to accommodate having the extra hand and to pay them, sometimes that can leave you hanging at bad times.
You can.
So pretty much you lower the amount of time that you're in the shop during the summer. And
I don't know what'll happen this winter. I'm not sure yet what'll
really
happen.
Okay.
This last winter, I was in the shop a lot. That was when I got ready for Summit.
Okay. Yeah.
To build up inventory. I don't have any plans to go anywhere. I'm not going to be able to make it to convention this year. I'll be in the shop for sure. I'm just not sure exactly what it'll look like as far as taking a lot of custom orders or whether I'll just kind of do some, sell as I go or what. I'm just not really sure yet.
Okay. So I saw that beautiful hammer that you made with the eagle stamp on it.
Yep.
I think this morning, maybe online.
Yeah.
And you said it was a hammer that was sitting around that you were able to use on that. So how often do you have tools that you've made hanging out? Like how often do you build a surplus?
I'll have stuff just hanging out that's not completely done.
Okay.
Like that particular hammer I had it was all forged out. It wasn't completely ground.
Gotcha.
So it's like that was the only one I had sitting in there. So that's why I went ahead and did that one. It was a little heavier than what most people like, but I wanted to try it for 4th of July. So
yeah, it's a beautiful hammer.
Thank you. My sister-in-law and her boyfriend were here. He's interested in blacksmithing. So we went out to the shop this afternoon and I forged out 2 of them.
Oh, okay.
I'll have those laying around. I can finish at some point. So I tell people I never need an excuse to go to the shop. So I always enjoy it. It's my place where I'm an introvert. I can go by myself and just kind of hang out.
Right. As part of your process, so it sounds like you'll make it. Will you do several hammers in a run usually, or is it usually one-offs and then you kind of complete it?
Most of the time I run batches of hammers. I'll just cut stock. I've just found that for my particular, what I'm doing, it's just, I work out of gas. I know a lot of guys make tools in coke and perhaps coal, but I do work in gas and I'm able to run in batches. So that's what I do. I'll just cut some stock, kind of know what kind of the weights people like, and then I'll just make some hammers.
Okay, cool. Do you have a favorite part of the process and a least favorite part of the process?
I'd say my favorite part is punching an eye. It's just really cool to punch an eye, through a billet on a rounding hammer. That's just really cool to see that, be able to punch a hole through something like that. I'd say handling and heat treating, I just don't really enjoy it. That's probably my least favorite part.
Is it? Yeah.
Some of the steps in the rounding hammers, just going back and forth, and it's kind of repetitive. Driving hammers are my favorite. I really like making driving hammers. I just like to make something different, just change it up. So
yeah.
And then sometimes I'll just make shoes. Sometimes I won't forge hammers for a long time and I'll just make shoes for inventory.
And do you mostly use handmaids in your day-to-day work?
No, just whatever I have on the truck. I don't know what percentage, but not a high percentage.
Okay.
I do enjoy it. There's just something about nailing on a handmade, but it just depends on how much time I've had to make shoes. So
right. No kidding. What sort of next steps for you? It sounds like you're not 100% sure. After doing Summit, I imagine you had to really spend a lot of time making inventory for that, right?
Which was okay because it was at the end of winter. So I was able to, spend the time in the shop. But originally, some of that was that. And I also sell the driving hammers through Wellshod. Some of that was to try to alleviate some of the Facebook stuff. It has a place for it. And John has been super helpful in working with me. But it's just kind of a both type thing. I don't think it can either be one or the other. I would like to go to convention. I hope to go next year when it's a little closer to home.
Okay. I guess timing for that isn't great, right? Because it's the end of your season.
Yeah, it's somewhat timing, but mostly the state my family is in right now to take off and leave for that amount of time and leave them all at home.
Right.
I got to be cognizant of that with my wife. And she was really good about, Summit was first time I'd ever been to Summit. That was a lot of fun. And I'd like to do convention as well, but just not this year.
As far as next steps, do you have any plans of pursuing any more certifications? Because it sounds like you're still like tinkering with the handmaids and stuff like that. Like you're still keeping yourself in that zone.
Yeah. So I try to do that. I've wondered that as I've listened to some of your other podcasts. It really was never in the cards. It never was. And I don't know that it ever will be. Maybe at a later time when my family's more grown up and are out of the house, that maybe. I feel like a little bit the tool making has given me an opportunity to stay involved with the farrier business, farrier world in a larger than just my own backyard. And I'm able to do that mostly from my backyard. So I feel like that has helped as well for me to stay involved and stay invigorated about my career.
Right.
Because I know certification's a huge driver against burnout and all that stuff. So I feel like the tool making has helped me on that end of things.
Cool. Yeah, I will add that to the list of some people ask me, like, what is the best way to combat this? And I always say certification or competition. But yeah, tool making.
Just to learn something new. I mean, it was actually really inspiring, invigorating in my career when, like I said, we talked before about Andrew. That was a huge, for me to really try to take stock of my business and try to steer it in a direction. That was a huge motivator for me as well.
No kidding. Once you sort of have a goal to aspire towards, and you start to pay attention to things that were just kind of passing you by.
Mm-hmm.
When you talked to Andrew, one of the things he discussed was his van. Did you make any changes vehicle wise?
I did. I made the move. I always shot out of trucks, and the last one I had right before my van was I had a 3/4 ton Dodge with a bay horse slide-in it. I decided to pull the trigger, and I bought a Transit, and I've since sold that, and now I'm working out of a ProMaster City with a bay horse interior in it. And I tell people I look kind of like a dork driving around.
Don't say that to the Europeans.
Yes. Yeah, I don't mean that offensively at all. But me and my buddy joke around that, my wife thought I looked like a goofball driving that thing around. I can't argue with the economics of it. I mean, it's really unbelievable. Especially I had made the move right before gas prices went through the roof.
Good timing.
Yeah, it's really, I will say now that I got the one now that I have with a bay horse interior in it. I bought that from another young kid out in Nebraska. I really like that. Before I had one that I'd kind of put together myself. It worked okay, but now I like this setup. I like it really well.
Okay. I'm not super familiar with the Dodge ones. Is that one that you can stand in? It would be bigger than the Transit.
No, it's kind of like the Transit Connect. It's the small version. Everything just forged and grinders swing out the back. And then I'd say the biggest thing I don't like is I miss my back door that flips up. And I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to fix that. I missed the shade and then the rain.
Right.
Because I can't park inside all my barns.
Right. I know a few people who run out of them have they're actually on Amazon. They're like a slide out awning that's designed for the back of a pickup truck or something. And I've seen that on a few people who work out of a bed slide or a van.
Yep.
Or you can be just tough like Andrew DeVisser is. And
no, I think I just listened to your new podcast this morning, and I think she said she doesn't like to get wet. And I don't like to get wet.
Nope, I don't either.
I can take the sun beating on me a lot quicker than I can take the rain pouring down on me, but Yeah.
Andrew, I was questioning him on that exact point one day, and it's actually kind of an ongoing joke between us. And he said, well, the one thing is, Brian, I'm not a princess. And when I asked him how he dealt with the rain.
Because I was picking his brain on that too. How do you deal with that? And he's just like, well, it's not that bad.
Well, yeah, and he talks about what a geographical oddity his place is, where it doesn't rain very often,
Yep.
and he doesn't get as much snow as I do,
Yeah.
and he lives only, I think he's about 2 hours away from me,
Okay.
but they are a bit of a banana belt as far as Canada goes.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. That's been my biggest complaint about my van.
How is it in the snow?
But honestly, when I first bought it, it was absolutely worthless. Like I drove it home in a snowstorm. Like I was shoeing and I drove it home and I couldn't even take off at a stoplight. I messaged Andrew. I know he's in Canada. So I'm like, what do you do? And he said, you got to put snow tires on that thing. And I'm like, that won't make that big a difference. But I did. And it was unbelievable. I mean, I've never got it stuck.
Okay.
We don't get a ton of snow, but I was amazed what a big difference that made.
Okay. We should talk about, so what is the difference in mileage between that and your, say, your last truck?
So my last truck, my Dodge, I was getting about 11 miles a gallon. With this ProMaster, I'm getting about 24 miles a gallon. So, and like Andrew says, like that Transit that I had, I mean, it was a little over $400 to put 4 tires on it. My big Dodge, you know, obviously that's a lot of money. So, and that was before all this. This was 4 years ago or so. So I'm sure it's more expensive now, but
right, since everything's increased, yeah,
they are cheaper to work on. But if money was no big deal at all, if it was nothing to do with it, I'd still want to work out of a, you know, one of those Stonewell trailers and stuff. I mean, they're just easy to work out of, but at this point in my career, it's just, this works good.
Yep. Half of that fuel money is going back in your pocket, more than half. So other than your price increases, was there anything else you changed kind of in that endeavor?
That was about it. Those were the big changes that Andrew helped me with.
Cool. So I usually ask before we go to the short answer questions, is there anything that you kind of say advice that you'd have for somebody starting out, or a soapbox that you like to stand on? And you'd be amazed how many people do have something. So how about yourself?
I don't really have a lot of soapboxes and stuff like that, but I would say a big thing is you got to find somebody that, if you're just starting out, find somebody that you can work with that will steer you in the right direction. It seems like it's a bigger thing now to apprentice with somebody than maybe what it even was 20 years ago when I started. As I
it does seem like it.
Hear and see some of these guys that are working with seasoned farriers. And like I said, get out and whatever that looks like in your life, get out and expose yourself, because you do become a big fish in your little pond.
Yeah.
It's easy to do.
There was something else I did want to ask you. In each person's area, there tends to be a certain kind of injury or issue, hoof-related issue, that they'll run into a lot. How about for yourself, and what are some of the remedies you have for it?
I would say I run into a fair amount of navicular. I mean, I do a healthy amount of quarter horses, and that can be such a variety as far as what I do. Some of them, you know, might just need a little breakover help. Some of them I might put a bar shoe on. I don't really have any like go-to for that. I mean, honestly, I try to just do things as cheap as I can for the horse owner, because I just try to keep it reasonable. I try not to throw the kitchen sink at him if I don't have to. And if I can get by with a little bit of a rolled or rocker toe on one, that's what I'm going to do. I do see a few negative plantar angles. I haven't exactly figured that one out yet, honestly.
I struggle with that myself.
I'm all ears. I got one mare. I just put some of those 3D pads on the back end. I'm supposed to reset her tomorrow. I'm supposed to go do her. We'll see if it's changed anything. I will tell you, I'm pretty traditional. I don't do a lot of, I don't want to say crazy things, but I just like to keep things simple. I just like to trim a foot and try to fit it. That's enough to keep me busy, just trying to do that.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I always find for hind end, especially the negative plantar angle, I've tried everything I could with the shoe first. And it's not very often that I get to the pad part. And I can't say I've had a lot of success. If one is really bad, I haven't had a lot of success with just the mechanics of the shoe. I've tried rockering on hinds. I've tried setting them way back, extended heels fit right to like penny on penny. There are probably some I should do more of, like what you were saying, like the 3D pad. So I'd be interested to find out how that one looks tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll see how it works. I've kind of wanted to try it on her. The owner she's really good client. Like, we could give these a go and see what happens. And that mare, I will tell you that I've tried to wedge her once or twice before, and a wedge never works. She gets really, really sore. So I just put a pair of flat 3D pads on her with some dental impression, and they're still on her, so we didn't have to pull them off and switch her. So that's better than what she does sometimes.
That's a good sign.
We'll see what happens with her.
Yeah, for sure. This portion of the podcast is called the Stratum Tectorium. These are the short answer, surface stuff questions, but it's okay if the guest wants to go deeper. Enjoy. Your favorite book?
That'd be the Bible.
Okay, that's a fairly common answer.
Yep.
Favorite brand of nails?
Cons. I'm a con guy.
Are ya? Okay. What shoe sizes do you generally have to stock the most of?
Aughts and ones.
Okay. So you're a con shoe guy as well, I'm guessing?
I am. Like, I've been using them for, I don't know how many, 3 or 4 years. I forget why I even started using them, but as far as steel shoes, that's pretty well all I nail on when it comes to keg shoes.
Okay. And what is it you like about them?
I don't know. I like the way they shape up. I mean, I like the way they nail. I'm very simple. I still kind of the way we learned in shoeing school. Like, I only pretty much carry generic shape, no clips, and I carry the Con 3/8, 3/4 keggers, and I do carry a few of the just the 5/16 as well for some horses. But I like them. They seem to wear okay, and
cool. Yeah, I've had some pretty good experience with them myself.
There's a lot of good keg shoes out there. Honestly, there's a lot of them out there. It's different what it used to be. We got a lot of options now.
What I've heard from a lot of people who started a lot earlier than I did in this career, some of the keg shoes, there was always a trade-off. You had to work around with them, but now there's so many good ones.
There's a lot of good products out there.
Favorite make of rasp?
The Hellers for sure. I just recently started using the green tangs again. I got away from them because they were clogging so bad on the fine side. So I went to the blues, and I've got along with the blues good. And then I talked to one of the reps at one of our local clinics, and he said, I think we got that sorted out. So I did buy some greens. I'm using a green right now, and it's been fine. And I'm like, wow, I love these things.
Okay.
They just give me a little better finish than what the blues do. But either blue or the green, that's fine. But if I could choose, I'd pick the green that doesn't clog. So
good. Well, yeah, I might have to try those again. That was my problem with them as well. So what is your dream farrier rig? I think we kind of already covered this.
Yeah, so if money wasn't an issue, I'd take one of those big, just those midi Stonewell type trailers. But really, the rig I got now, it's a 2016 Pro Master City and with the bay horse in it, and I really like it. With the custom interior, it still looks professional. It really works good, and I should be able to, with a little bit of work, it'll switch to a new van once I switch to another van. So. Because they're no longer really making them that much. So they don't like to make them for these things. So that's the reason I bought this.
Like Bayhorse doesn't?
Stonewall doesn't like to make them either because it's so time consuming.
Oh, really?
I originally had Stonewall was going to make me instead of like a slide-in cap, it was going to be a slide-in unit for my Transit so that I could pull it in and out with a forklift. They were perfectly willing to do that because they didn't have to attach everything. But then I found this van, so I ended up going that route instead.
Okay.
Maybe I don't have my wires crossed, so I don't want to give out any bad information that they're not interested in doing that. But it seemed like I ran into a little bit of friction.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Here's a good one for you. Favorite rounding hammer?
Yeah, I've thought about this one. Honestly, any rounding hammer with my handle on it. I like my handle that I feel. I mean, obviously, I'm probably going to pick one of my rounding hammers, but I like the way a forged rounding hammer feels. in your hand. And that's not to say that there's not other good ones out there. You know, I swung Flatlands for up until I started making my own, and Jim makes an awesome hammer as well. There's a lot of good ones out there.
Okay. And what is it about your handle that you like?
If I bought any hammer and I wanted to whittle it down to that, it's where I would have it. That was always the biggest headache about buying a new hammer handle, was then I had to take all that time to fit it how I wanted. So now it's really nice that I could just drop one in and it's already fit.
Right.
It's really nothing special. It's just it's 18 inches long and just kind of the diameter, the width I like it. Not really super, super skinny, but it's definitely skinnier than what some of them you buy off the shelf would be.
Right. So in your rounding hammers, what's your preferred weight?
1.75 pounds to 2 pounds is what I like.
Okay. What's your favorite type of bar stock to work with?
3/8, 3/4 flat.
Flat. Okay. Favorite pastime after work?
That's kind of a hard one. I mean,
More work.
Yeah. My relaxation and just downtime is just hanging out, just in the shop by myself and making something. You know, I do stuff with my wife and kids as well. And
Well, with that many kids, do you guys do a lot of sports and stuff? Are you a glorified chauffeur?
our kids have never really pushed to do a lot of sports. So my son that's going to be a senior, he plays football. Yeah. Other than that, he's the only one that plays sports. My daughter tried it, didn't really care for it. So that does make life a lot easier that our kids aren't involved in a whole lot of stuff, because I know a lot of parents are running like crazies. I am thankful for that they're not all over that, because that would make our lives a lot more hectic.
No kidding. That when you said how many kids you had, that was my first thought was, how does he even have time to talk to me now?
Yeah, no.
What's the next thing on your bucket list?
I guess not really anything in particular. I tell you what I would like to learn how to do is I'd like to learn how to make some Damascus hammers. I've never learned how to do that. Just keep doing what I'm doing. You know, maybe eventually there'll be some certification stuff like that. I would like to come down and hang out at Chris and Kelly's a little bit for the blacksmithing course or something like that, just to come down. But I don't have anything huge on the list.
And this has come up in my head a few times, and I forgot to ask, do you use a trip hammer or power hammer in your shop?
So I use a power hammer and I use a press.
Okay.
Yeah. I learned how to do it with a sledgehammer and all hand tools, but then I built a forging press, converted a log splitter, and then I bought an air hammer as well.
Oh, cool.
I don't do too much with a hand hammer anymore, but
well, that's why you're not wearing an ice pack on your elbow.
That's right.
Now.
Yeah. I used to wake up and my arm it'd wake me up at night because it would just hurt and go numb. And
yep, been there. Ideal number of horses to shoe all around in one day?
4.
Yeah, that's a pretty common answer. On average, how long does it take you to shoe one all around if you had to do new shoes?
I would say about an hour. Maybe, yeah, about an hour and 15, depending on what I'm, what it's getting, but just a normal shoeing job, about an hour.
Favorite anvil?
So I got a Scott on the truck and I got an Anvil Brand 200 in the shop. They're both really good anvils. I like them both. For what I'm doing with each of them, I think they're both, ideal, but I think those are the two. I know you got some Emersons. I've never had an Emerson. Both of those, they make some good anvils.
I think I've worked on both of those in the Heartland, so I can agree.
Yeah, they just had a bunch of random round horn anvils when I was there. Yeah, things have changed.
Yeah, there's quite the collection there now. It's just you fight to find the one with the straightest edge.
Exactly.
Or the squarest edge.
Exactly.
Do you have a favorite inspirational quote?
I don't know that I have a favorite one. I've been thinking about some, because I know you asked this question, is what you focus on expands. What you focus on in life, that's going to expand and take up more of your mind, your bandwidth in your mind. And I'm a very sad to say, I tend to be a really negative thinker. So that's one that I have to work on.
You have to watch what you focus on.
I focus on the negative way too easily.
I fall into that trap myself.
Yep.
And especially when you get busy, I feel like it's easier to fall into that trap.
Yep.
Do you have a Farrier Terrier?
I don't. I used to. She's still alive. When I switched to the van, she decided that she didn't really like to ride with me as much.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got a little mini Aussie. She's about 8 years old, and she'd sit in that truck for 8 hours. The back seat was hers. She doesn't care for the van, I don't think, much. And she can't get away from like if a dog comes up to the van, they're more at eye level. And the more I've thought about it, I've heard them say it on your podcast too. Maybe it's just the older I get, I'm not as interested in trying to babysit my dog. I mean, my dog's a good dog, but it's just one more thing I got to worry about. And she's getting a little grumpy in her old age, so she doesn't go with me anymore.
Oh, okay. If you're stumped on a case or need backup, who do you call?
That would be Steve Shimmersheim.
And then I think we kind of already covered this. Do you have a favorite chew or package for a mystery lameness?
I'm probably going to try to put a rolled rocker, salad bowl, anything like that is probably what I'm going to try first. Just something pretty simple. Maybe throw a pad on it, but if I can help with putting a pad on, I don't like to, but we'll if we need to.
What do you use as your planner or agenda?
Old-fashioned day planner.
For some reason, I thought you'd say that.
I've thought about it, but it's pretty much as far as I've gotten as I've thought about it. Switching to the phone.
Favorite method of soothing aches and pains?
I really don't. I mean, I'll take a little ibuprofen every now and again. Thankfully, I've been blessed. I really don't have I've heard people say that after 40 things change. I thought that just can't be. And I hit 40 in November. I notice it. Like I don't hurt all the time, but I mean, I get up out of bed and I'm stiff. And it used to be I could bend over, and I tell people I could bend over and trim 10 horses and never come up for air. That doesn't work anymore. So yeah, I gotta watch it. I'm really trying to. That's one thing with Andrew. This helped too. I tried to get stuff situated where I can do a reasonable amount of horses in a day, make enough money for what I want to make. So I don't got to do the number.
You're not breaking yourself to do it.
Because I tell people I want to shoe horses when I'm old, not because I have to necessarily, but just because I really enjoy it, and even if I go shoe one or two, I just enjoy it.
You want to still be able to enjoy it.
I'm really fortunate to do something that I just most days doesn't seem like a job. It just get to go have fun and shoe some horses.
Yeah. Not many people are fortunate enough to find that particular career. So,
yep.
Do you have a favorite drink?
I would say Pepsi, but I don't drink it very much.
You're an abstainer.
I used to be first it was Mountain Dew, then it was Pepsi. I mean, I drink 2 or 3 44 ounces a day, and I wouldn't hardly drink any water. I wouldn't hardly drink any water, and I have cut way back. So I would say coffee. I drink a lot of coffee. So
okay, that's your new answer. Your healthier answer.
Yeah, that's right.
Alex, whose interview you heard today, it sounds like, she suggested for this next question that I get more specific. So I normally ask your favorite genre of music, and I will ask you that. But then also, what is your favorite song?
I've thought about this one too. I don't really listen to a lot of music. I'm kind of weird that way.
Oh, really?
What I do listen to is really going to sound old-fashioned, but I listen to just some pretty normal classic hymn type music, stuff that groups from our own church would put together and stuff like that. So I know it's not a very exciting answer, but that's what I listen to when it comes to music. I do listen to a fair amount of podcasts and audiobooks, but I don't listen to a lot of music.
Gotcha. So do you have a favorite hymn you would listen to?
Nothing's coming to the top of my mind. Nothing specific right now, but just a different.
Well, Alex, I tried.
Tell Alex you tried. Yeah. Different times in my life, different things I'm going through. Certain ones will speak to me.
Gotcha. Do you work out?
No, I don't. Only when I start hurting, then I'll start stretching.
Right. Yep. I think we all do that. What would you have been if not a farrier?
I'd probably say I'd probably be driving a truck. That's what I did that's just what I knew how to do. I don't know. I wouldn't be happy doing it probably, but yeah, that would be the fallback thing.
And then the COVID question, if you were stuck in a shop with somebody for a month, who would it be?
Yeah, that would probably be my buddy Steve. There's a lot of guys I'd like to spend, some time with, but I do know him and we could spend a month together and probably be okay. And
come out the other side.
We'd come out the other side. We probably wouldn't. We wouldn't kill each other, and we just like to hang out.
Well, thank you very much for doing this.
No problem. Thanks for asking. So a quick story, if you got a minute. I sold a hammer to a guy out east. This was way back, like when I couldn't hardly give them away. and my handle fit was absolutely terrible. And he politely sent me a message and said, this handle fit just does not meet, it's just not any good, basically. He said it really nicely, very polite. He said, I'll keep the hammer. But that was a huge turning point for me, that he was very gracious and just pointed it out. That was one of the turning points in my tool making stuff, was when he just pointed that out and was very helpful and gracious. We worked it out, and he's bought several hammers from me, a couple at least from me since.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so it worked out really good. And I really appreciated when he did that.
Well, I think it's kind of like shoeing. You don't realize you're doing something wrong or you need to improve something until you have somebody else watch you do it.
Exactly.
Whether that's somebody along with you or a certification or whatever. But those things can really change things.
Like a lot of people would say, most, if not all, of what I know and what I've learned, I've learned from somebody else. It's not really anything original.
No, we're all like that. No, and not everybody can take that criticism either, right?
Yeah, it was hard.
That makes a difference in a good tool maker.